Welcome to World Stories. Residents of Venice find themselves priced out of the property market. Canada's First Nations protest against aquaculture. But we begin in Germany. After last week's election, the AfD, a far-right party, has its first seats in the Bundestag. We visited the Ruhr Valley, long considered a stronghold of the Social Democrats.
The city of Essen is this politician's hometown. But since the German election, Karlheinz Endruschat, a social democrat, says he doesn't recognize it anymore. In the past, his party usually won an easy majority, but this time, just 28%. Many of Endruschat's neighbors told him in advance that they were voting for the far-right AfD party instead of his.
People tell me they come from a family that's always voted SPD, but they went with the far right because they felt we needed to wake up. We have to win back our voters. If we just sit around and wait for 4 years, that's not going to happen.
Endruschat is at pains to find out how to get his constituents back in his camp, at least the blue-collar contingent. In his neighborhood pub, he runs into supporters of the far right.
I would have voted for the AfD too, but you know what? I threw away my ballot. The police, they don't even have the nerve to drive to the main station anymore.
Rising crime rates, 11% unemployment, and a migrant population of 40%. And all that in a city that's run out of money and has few resources to solve its problems. That's how analysts are explaining this social democrat stronghold turning to the AfD. But this area in the Ruhr Valley has long been known for its successful integration of hundreds of thousands of migrant workers, once known as guest workers decades ago. At an anti-racism gathering in Essen, a diverse crowd watches performers sing out against the far right. Many in the migrant community have expressed growing concerns since the election.
People from the AfD will try and stop such events from happening. There'll be a lot of tension. And that tension will have a negative effect on our day-to-day interactions.
This was the moment of the AfD's triumph as Sunday's election results were announced. Harald Parussel, a newly minted AfD politician, likes to replay this scene on his computer. He used to be a teacher and vote SPD, but he says he felt the party wasn't addressing his concerns anymore. He couldn't speak his mind about Chancellor Merkel's open-door refugee policy. He insists he's no racist. He was an instructor for children with migrant backgrounds for years. But he agrees with the AfD's position that Germany should stop atoning for its Nazi past.
Every time a German tries to show even the smallest measure of patriotism, someone takes out a swastika and beats him over the head with it.
Then came the TV news report that members of the AfD parliamentary group have already started bickering. Parussel is speechless, and he begins to wonder if the party will even last 4 years. Karlheinz Endruschat is holding out hope for better times for his Social Democratic Party. Since the election, Essen is not like it used to be.
Canadian salmon is popular here in Europe. The market is booming, but not everyone is happy. Among Canada's First Nations, opposition to aquaculture on the country's west coast is growing.
Carissa Glendale is a member of the Namgis Nation, an indigenous people from the west coast of Canada. She's now fighting against industrial fish farms like this one, which raise hundreds of thousands of salmon in the region. Glendale and other demonstrators have set up camp in the middle of this farm. And they say they've occupied it. They want to send a clear message.
We're done with this fish farm industry. They have never had our permission to be in our territories, and we've had enough. We're not going to let them destroy our environment, our waters, take our salmon away from us. We're done. These guys need to get out, and they need to get out now.
The occupied facility was built by Norwegian company Marine Harvest, the largest salmon farming firm in the world. It has sales of around 3.5 billion euros a year. Company representatives refuse to speak with us. The industry is profiting from Canada's new trade agreement with the EU, which has gotten rid of tariffs and increased production and exports. But environmental activists say aquaculture is damaging wild stocks of fish. When they migrate upstream from the Pacific to reproduce, they swim right past the fish farms. And critics say that has spread disease and infection. Canadian authorities, however, play down the issue and say the caged salmon pose no threat to their wild cousins.
When Atlantic salmon are actually put out into the ocean, they go disease-free. They're raised in hatcheries, land-based facilities, and fresh water. And we actually have a large suite of vaccinations that are given to the fish to guarantee that they're entering the water in a clean and healthy way.
That may be true, but why are fishermen in British Columbia catching fewer and fewer wild salmon? Many factors could be playing a role, not least climate change or pollution. But most locals blame the fish farms for their empty lines and nets. The First Nations activists are planning to continue to protest the industrial aquaculture facilities in their waters and say their rights are being violated. Even the Coast Guard is now involved, and there's no end to the impasse in sight. The Namgis say the only solution is for the fish farm to shut down.
Venice is a dream destination for many tourists, but its residents are being squeezed out by rising prices. Now local activists are determined to limit the damage done by Airbnb and offer alternatives.
Venice, a dream destination for millions of tourists. But for local residents, it's become more of a nightmare. The crowds descend year-round to walk across the famous bridges and see the sights. And unwittingly, they're squeezing locals out. It's becoming increasingly difficult for Venetians to live in their city of canals.
Right now, in this moment, I think to be the only Venetian here. I am like a stranger.
Secchi belongs to a group of activists. They're campaigning for affordable housing for Venetians.
The private properties, the owners of the houses prefer to give the houses to the tourists because they earn very much money than to rent a house to a Venetian family.
Short-term tourist rentals are taxed at the same rate as long-term lets. Airbnb, for example, is booming here. The platform offers more than 5,000 apartments rented out regularly to mainly young visitors.
We came from Barcelona exactly, and we stayed in Airbnb for just one night.
The hotel industry is also alarmed. It's trying to exert pressure on the city's government. The aim is not to ban private rentals, but implement restrictions. We suggest limiting the duration of rentals to 90, 120 or 150 days. People shouldn't be allowed to let their properties to tourists the whole year. That's when it stops being a side earner and becomes a commercial business. And one that's enjoyed by many foreign companies too. The answer, though, is not to vilify guests, says Emanuele del Carlo, but to instead support local Venetians. He's part of an international network called FairBnB. Its aim is to provide an alternative rental platform that benefits both locals and tourists alike.
Who's gonna spend money with us knows that the person is giving money is a resident, and a great part of the commission that we will withhold is going to be reinvested in like child school programs to restoration of buildings, arts and stuff like that.
FairBnB is still in its early stages. Next year the platform will go online. If successful, it will be doing its bit to ensure that the city of canals is not just in the hands of foreign investors and tourists.
The global beauty trade is a billion-dollar industry. Cosmetics, health, the hair industry. In Africa particularly, the demand for hair extensions and wigs is booming. This report from Nairobi.
Dandora is one of Africa's biggest trash heaps. But what's a cast-off for some is a treasure for others. Thousands of Kenyans make their livelihoods from trash, like Winnie Wanjira. She specialises in hair, both synthetic and real. There are many different types of hair. If you're lucky, you might find undyed human hair. Someone may have bought it but not liked it and chucked it away. The boys from the dump sell them to me for the equivalent of $2 US, and I then sell them to a salon for around $5 US. Not a bad profit margin for the 31-year-old, but competition is tough at the dump. She's not the only one keen to make money with hair. Here at the market in one of Nairobi's poorer areas, the hairpieces are sorted and cleaned, oiled and combed. Like many other hairstylists, Mary Wanjiku buys the hair from the rubbish dump and then prepares it for her customers. They pay a fraction of what they would in top salons. We like these pieces because they're cheap and come from nearby, instead of those from the central business district that are expensive and far away. By the time they arrive, the customer has left. This woman doesn't mind that her new adornment once lay on the trash pile, as long as it's properly restored, looks good and the price is right. She's just one of many benefiting from this form of recycling.